Hi, welcome to another episode of Brand Fever. I was just casually reading about brands to dive into, and this industry caught my attention because of the moves that big conglomerates such as Robinson's Retail by the Gokongwei family and Ayala Health have been making as they make their push towards dethroning Mercury Drug. Mercury Drug is the most dominant pharmaceutical chain in the Philippines with a market share of around 50 to 62%. It is considered as a leading brand in its segment, and it not only has the biggest share in the market, but it has also become the top of mind brand as to where to buy medicine. Mercury Drug has built a powerful brand built on the idea of trust because people trust Mercury to provide them with authentic medicine. And this is the very sentiment that kickstarted the Mercury Drug business ever since the beginning in the hands of its founder, Mariano Que. Mariano Que's story is an inspiring one and also very educational because everything he did was pretty fundamental, as you will later on find out. Mariano Que was born in 1921, just a few years after World War I, and he will live through World War II. It seems tough to be around this period, but it will be a blessing in disguise for the young Mariano Que. He wasn't born rich, far from it actually, since he was orphaned and deprived of the opportunity to study early in his life. And in order to make a living, he started out working in a drugstore in Manila. You can easily point out that these were tiny seedlings of his future company because as he worked at this drugstore, he was exposed to the world of medication. This is where he would learn what medicines people needed, which ones worked best, and which illnesses most people were suffering from. And during this period, there was demand for a new type of drug. These new drugs were developed by German scientists in the 1930s, and they were considered revolutionary, and they even went on to call them as miracle drugs. These were the sulfa drugs. The sulfa drugs were considered miracle drugs because they enabled the treatment of pneumonia, several bacterial infections, and even gonorrhea. Before these drugs were made available to the public, these illnesses were very difficult to treat, and so the sulfa drugs were in high demand. Well, unfortunately, scientists would later on find out that these sulfa drugs had a couple of harmful side effects. But despite this, we still can't discount the impact that these drugs had, and they are credited for saving millions of lives globally through World War II. During the Japanese occupation in World War II, as the US forces were crushing the Japanese stronghold, supplies were becoming scarce. This includes everything from food to medicines. And so consequently, when the Japanese were defeated and the Americans came in, there was a surge in demand for supplies, especially medicine, and specifically the sulfa drugs. Among the sulfa drugs, sulfathiazole is the most sought after since it is considered as a go-to cure-all type of drug. Demand was so high because the entire city was in ruins. All the big stores where people used to buy from, these businesses were gone, including the pharmacies. As a result, after the war, since the big stores were no longer around, trading happened in smaller, busy marketplaces. And with this, entrepreneurs took advantage of this opportunity to start a business that could provide for people's needs whilst making a profit. And this is exactly what Mariano Que did, but his motivations were different. I mean, sure, he needed the money to make a living, but one other thing that pushed him to take this path was due to the suffering of many Filipinos as a result of the devastation of World War II. Many Filipinos were in dire need of these miracle drugs. And so, since he had experience working at the drugstore years prior, he started selling medicine. There was nothing explosive about his first steps. It's not like he rented out space and launched the first Mercury Drug branch immediately. Far from it. He didn't have money, and just like the majority of people after the war, they all had to start from scratch. So in those early days, Mariano Que bought a couple of vials and capsules, and then he would resell them at a small profit. He would do this for a while, and then eventually he was able to save up some money. He took 100 pesos from his savings so that he could purchase a bottle of sulfathiazole tablets. He would then sell the pills individually. It's quite basic really. It's basically buying something at wholesale, in his case buying the bottle of tablets, and then reselling them individually at a higher price. It's what we call tinge-tinge. Something that many Filipinos were doing that time as they searched for a way to earn money. This strategy is incredibly tedious, but once applied consistently, it can gain momentum. And Mariano Que is nothing short of consistent. Eventually, he was able to save enough money to invest in a pushcart. And now, he wasn't only selling the sulfathiazole alone, he was also selling other types of medicine. Now here's the thing, Mariano Que didn't really invent this method of earning money. Everyone else that time was capable of doing what he did. And so of course, there were so many other competitors. And during that period, the drug market was still heavily unregulated. As a result, the black market for these drugs led to abuses by the sellers. Many of the sellers would sell fake drugs that can be more harmful than helpful. Some of them were even expired, and some weren't even the drugs that people were looking for, and oftentimes, these drugs would be sold at ridiculously high prices. However, Mariano Que did it differently. Although it was easy for these abusive competitors to build the same business that he was building, they neglected building their reputation. If there's one singular reason as to why the present-day Mercury Drug remains as the leading brand, it's because of the brand's reputation. Even today, Mercury Drug is synonymous with high-quality medicines. The drugs they sell are available in other drugstores. It's just that, you feel more assured that you're getting a legitimate product when you buy from Mercury Drug. And I guess this all started way back then when Mariano Que was just roaming around selling a handful of sulfathiazoles. Mariano Que's competitors during that time failed to see the value of treating customers the right way. So what he did was that he did his best in maintaining the quality and freshness of his products. He made sure that his products were priced fairly. It was a simple change, but this goodwill was the invaluable asset that other competitors will have difficulty in duplicating. Mariano Que's one-man pushcart drugstore would gradually become the go-to pharmacy of the people, and eventually this allowed him to save up enough money to open his first store in Bambang, Manila on March 1, 1945. He named the store after the Roman god Mercury, the bearer of the caduceus, the symbol of the medical profession. Mercury Drug would remain as a one-store operation into the 1960s. In 1948, Mariano Que started buying vehicles so that Mercury Drug can deliver medicine to its customers. I mean, a medicine delivery service in 1948. I have a feeling that this was unheard of during that time. One more thing that made Mercury Drug stand out was their store hours. In the 1950s, Mariano Que extended the store hours, making Mercury Drug open 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. This would then improve to 24-hour store hours by 1965. Sure enough, this resulted in more customer sales. Even to this day, Mercury Drug normally has at least one branch that is open 24/7. In the early 1960s, Mercury Drug was contacted by a company we're all familiar with, who of course was already a big company even at that time, Ayala Corporation. Ayala was in the process of building a shopping center in Makati, and they needed a drugstore in the mall. And since they're the type of people who like going for top-tier brands, they invited Mercury Drug to come on in and lease the space. They successfully came up with an agreement, and so in 1963, Mercury Drug opened its second location. And this became the first self-service drugstore in the Philippines. By 1965, Mercury Drug opened its third location in Quiapo. This location became their flagship store. Mercury Drug then entered a period of growth as they pushed to open more locations. Sure enough, the challenge of growth is on how you can maintain the same quality of service at a bigger scale. Because it's manageable to maintain your standards in a single branch, but it's more challenging to do it when you have hundreds of locations. Because of this, Mercury would invest in technology and assets that would help it be able to maintain this quality. In 1967, in order to support this growth, they invested in warehouses. And not just ordinary warehouses, these were equipped with computer-guided temperature controls to ensure that their products were kept in best condition. And they also became the first to introduce biological refrigerators in their stores. With these types of maneuvers, you kind of get a sense that Mercury wasn't just there to be another big pharmacy. It was trying to be the biggest in the country. I guess even back then, Mercury Drug was ahead of its competitors in terms of finding new ways to improve. Mercury Drug would continue to grow, but it would keep its new branches within the Manila market. But their growth wasn't just in opening new branches, because they also made a big acquisition. In April of 1970, the Medical Center Drug Corporation, or MCDC for short, was acquired by Mercury Drug Corporation. This acquisition marks Mercury Drug's entry into the distribution of pharmaceutical equipment, supplies, and surgical instruments. It's a move that complements Mercury Drug's existing pharmaceutical retail sales in their drugstores since MCDC focuses on the distribution of equipment to hospitals. This acquisition would then cause Mercury Drug Corporation to restructure, having the Mercury Group of companies as the parent company and Mercury Drug and MCDC as its subsidiaries. They would later on rename MCDC as Medical Center Trading Corporation to avoid confusion with the Mercury Drug name. Sure enough, MCTC, which is now owned by Mercury, would also become the leading importer and distributor of medical, hospital, and laboratory equipment in the country. This acquisition would be one of many others that Mariano Que would venture onto that's not related to pharmaceuticals. The Mercury Group would introduce their own brand of convenience stores called Q10. This was their response to the growth of 7-Eleven in the Philippines. They would put these stores near Mercury Drug branches, but eventually each branch became a convenience store and a drugstore all in one location. In 1965, they also entered the fast food chain business when they launched Tropical Hut. Tropical Hut sells cheap fast food meals, and the brand has several locations in Manila. All of these brands contributes to Mercury's growth, and by 1976, Mercury Drug started to go beyond Metro Manila for the first time. This period is when Mercury's expansion plan goes into overdrive because by 1995, Mercury would be in over 270 locations. And by 2004, the company's store count reached 450. In 2015, Mercury Drug reportedly dominates the category with a 62% market share with earnings of up to 104 billion pesos. Sadly, Mariano Que has since passed away on April 15, 2017. He was 96. During the homily of Father De La Rosa during the funeral ceremony, he shared what Mariano Que said in a rare press interview, and I quote, "My life's priorities are these. First, God. Then, my family, my country, my work, my health, and my peace of mind. I believe that success is measured not by the accumulation of wealth nor the building of business empires, but the way one is able to use his life and resources to serve and touch the lives of others. In my heart, I hope and pray that I was able to do this and make a difference in this world." Sure enough, Mariano Que did walk his talk even when he was still around. Unlike many other wealthy entrepreneurs who normally launch foundations or nonprofits late in their careers, Mariano Que was already giving back way back in Mercury Drug's early days. The Mercury Drug Foundation has several initiatives that help communities in the Philippines. The company gives away full scholarships to pharmacy students. They hold medical outreach programs and give away free medical services and medicines to underserved communities. And they also give access to water for communities in need of it nationwide. This is Chris, and I'll be back next week with a new episode. If you wish to support the show, tell your friends about Brand Fever. For the meantime, please subscribe and listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on your favorite podcast app. If you have any suggestions on how I can improve the show, send me an email. My email address is chris@partisan.ph. To get the latest show updates, follow us on Twitter. We're at Brand Fever. Thanks for listening to another episode of Brand Fever.